Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Hub Live Q&A with Rob Roy. How are you, Rob?
Great, Dux. How you doing today?
Great. It's been an incredible week, right, with the amount of earnings we've had out this week. I get so excited for earnings. I'm sure you do as well.
Yeah, we get a lot of signals during earnings season, obviously. So
yeah, some great names. Like you had Microsoft, GM, Google, Spotify, Roku last night. Like they're moving around today. But we're here for having everyone send in their questions and get a little bit of feedback and so forth. Don't forget to click on that like and subscribe button below. Numbers keep growing for the channel, so it's fantastic. All right, Rob, what do you want to look at first before we jump into the questions?
yeah, as you mentioned, Dux, we are in the middle of earnings season. This week, next week, going to be real heavy. I think the majority of the S&P reports by the end of next week. The one thing I want to talk about is yesterday was quite interesting, I thought. We opened at the highs of the day and closed at the low of the day. There was a big rollover in the middle of the day. So we had what's known as an outside day. That's when the high of the day exceeds the high of the previous day and the low of the day exceeds the low of the previous day. And then you couple that with the fact that we opened at the high and closed at the low. That's kind of an odd formation. What an outside day or an inside day means, which looks like we may have today, as you can see by the bar so far, it usually means that the market's about to move. It's kind of like a triangle. It tells you that something's getting ready to happen, but you don't know which direction. Now, if you had to guess, I've been doing this a long time, and I would have suspected if you open at the high and close at the low, that what would have occurred today is likely to move lower. But we did have the PCE deflator. We'll talk about more of that on the U.S. market update over on the EWO channel later on. But that came in a little bit better than expected. I think, Powell's comment of they may not start cutting rates until 2025, or at least that's when they think they'll get to the 2%, is kind of what played into the rollover, but it was pretty wild. Anyway, so that's where we are now, and we'll see how things play out to the end of the day. We were rallying earlier, and then we had a sell-off. Dux, we seem to, when we do these live shows, we usually are rallying, and then it sells off into the close, but the sell-off started a little early, and now we're bouncing back again. So who knows where we end up closing today. But yeah, that's the general news. So let's get to some questions on individual stocks.
Yeah, it's Alpha Oscar jumped in here early. He was been sitting here waiting for you to come online, which is great. Thanks, Alpha. He wants to look at SOUN, Sound.
SOUN.
Yeah, it's an AI stock.
SoundHound. All right, what a great name. Not too familiar with this one. It's a little bit overbought going into today. We're trying to bounce back. There is some support here at 2, so you had 2 things working for you today for a bounce. Is yesterday at the close we were oversold from the 10-day moving average, and then there's support here at 2. I would expect this likely bounces back towards that 10-day moving average, so maybe some follow through on this bounce. To go long, however, I think you got to get back above 3. So if you're looking at it as a long position, there's too much resistance here. You can see how many times it's bumped its head on 3 here. Basically the whole year. We got above it in early February, but it couldn't hold it. Went back, tested, supported 2, and we've been going back and forth again. Tried to get above 3 there at the end of June, early July, and now we're back down testing 2 again. So it's struggling to break out of this trading range, but the range is certainly between 2 and 3. If it does break below 2, then there's not a lot to hold it before coming down to test that last bit of support from the end of last year around 1. So 2 to 3 is your range. I think I would sit on my hands right now. Break below 2, it's a short. A break above 3, and it's a long. But for right now, I just think you have to watch this one. Interesting one. I'm not familiar with that stock.
Yeah, I was talking to someone this week about European AI stocks and a lot of the smaller ones. I'm actually going to do an interview with them in a few weeks. There's so many different AI companies around the world, and definitely this is another one which I didn't know anything about. So we're always willing to learn.
You're right, Dux, and I'm a creature of habits, and an old dog here, and so SoundHound, a little bit of a pun there, but I guess I really need to start getting. I'm familiar with the Magnificent Seven with the AI stuff, obviously, but we're branching out here, so I'm going to have to extend my horizons here, I think, begrudgingly.
That's right. So the next one we've got coming is from Manuel Costa. He's looking at a good friend of mine, Matt Tuttle, the short ARK ETF. He was the brains behind this launching. I think it's owned by Axis, I think now.
So
SARK.
SARK.
Yeah.
Okay. And it was one of the ARKs, but I couldn't remember SARK. And so, well, yeah, that's not a really good looking chart there. We're below the 10-day moving average, moving lower today, and we broke support at 35. I'm trying to find something good to say, Dux, but I'm struggling to find anything. The only way I could go long this is to get back above 35, but honestly, it looks like it wants to head lower to me, and I think that wave 5 low down there below 30 is likely where we're heading on this. That's the way it looks to me. So I can't see a positive catalyst here. Let's look at the CCI and see what we're doing. It's not giving anything helpful there on their short-term indicator either. Maybe we get a test back to 35 if you're long, and this is hurting at the moment. If it could test back to 35, I think that could be your best out. And then maybe even consider short, but this looks like it wants to go lower to me.
Yeah, I was listening. Like the technical names or technology names are all flying, right? So makes common sense. Short versus short. Kathy Wood, like ARK's obviously doing better. If you want to have a quick look at the ARK ETF to make a comparison to it.
Yeah. And which one you want to look at? AARK or?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yesterday the 10-year got back above 4%. And was wondering, what that was going to do. I think that kind of played into a little bit of the sell-off, but then we're back down again, back below that level, and so no follow-through to the upside on rates. And yeah, the big tech guys, as you said, Dux, are off and running again today, and a little bit of a pullback there, and that coincides with that move back above 10, in my opinion, on the 10-year. But a little better action today. We're kind of right at the 4% anyway. It's just a little bit below it. But at least rates are lower and we're not following through to the upside. So that's the positive. And as long as we stay in that range that we've talked about for so long, Dux, between 34 and 40 on the TNX, you got to look at the tech stuff. And so a little bit of a pullback here. I think it would have been okay even if it came all the way down and tested 45, because that was resistance for a while. And we didn't even make it back down that far. So if it gets back above 50, then gosh, we could be off and running again, as hard as it is to believe. Yeah, above 50, you got to go long for sure.
Okay. Actually, talking about the 10-year, Brian Smith just popped in there before. So yesterday, the 10-year popped above the 4%. The market reversed down. So he's like talking about the same things you are.
Yep.
That's
exactly
next one here
right.
from.
That's the level to look at. He's spot on.
Yeah. The next one is from Fluffy Lolita. A bit of a tongue twister for me. Wants to look at Amazon, and as you and I were discussing before we came online, they do report next week on Thursday, I believe.
Yep, and all indications are the consumer is still spending, and we talked about how I think they lied on the consumer confidence survey about traveling. I mean, travel has been crazy. Oil prices going back to the upside. Not too much fun at the gas tank or at the gas pumps. And Amazon holding nicely here. Looked like we were about to break down. Perhaps this was just a little bit of a test down towards the 50-day moving average, but we're right back above 130. Stock looks pretty good going into earnings, and certainly could see a pop up towards 150 on a decent earnings report. And I'm just not seeing the signs that the consumer has backed off spending. Now, we could argue that they're spending on credit cards because that's what the data is showing. But until those credit card limits run out, we're still going to spend, and that seems to be a positive for Amazon. So barring anything unusually negative, that would break below 130. So break below 130, and I completely changed my tune on Amazon. But above it, I think it stays strong, and I wouldn't even be against going long on Amazon into earnings. The pattern is just so good, and it looks so strong. Chipotle reporting, and the margins got them. It wasn't the fact that people, it was the inflationary margin, so it compressed their margins on their food costs. But it wasn't, a lack of business that hurt Chipotle. And, a lot of people look at the margins as a big key indicator. And, plus Chipotle had a hell of a run since their last earnings report. So a bit of a pullback was in the cards. But I don't think that's an indicator of consumers not, going out to eat and spending, is what I was trying to say.
Yeah. Emil's asking a question about what computers we're using because you can't display the charts. Like, listen, I'm using Microsoft Service. I don't know what Rob's doing, but this is streaming through the internet, so you should be able to see the charts, no problem.
Yeah, we're going through Zoom, right? So I mean, it shouldn't be.
Hasta la vista, Barbie. He's asking, what do you think about DraftKings, DKNG?
I want to look at the chart again. We looked at this. I don't know if it was last week, Ducks, or the weeks before, but we looked at this. But we're coming into football season, right? Our football, Ducks, not your football. You guys got to change the name. No, I mean, I think you guys have it right. We throw ours most of the time, right? So why is it called football? But anyway, I think I've been really impressed. I think we looked at it with this last big move to the upside, and I was a little nervous about this doji, if I remember right. But we gapped up above it. I just hate the fact that we've gone vertical and we have a gap here. That's the only thing that makes me nervous. So I would be nervously long. I mean, this is where they make their bread and butter, right? Is during football season. That's the number one gambling event. March Madness is big. A few other things, but we got the U.S. women's soccer team playing in your neck of the woods down under. But this is where the money is made in football, and football season's getting ready to start. So you want to be. I just really my term that I've been using for quite some time, cautiously optimistic. I'd be cautiously long here if we can get above this wave 3 high moving into football season. It's hard not to go long, but man, in the back of my mind, this would keep me on edge the whole time. So I think you go long here, you move forward, but you do it with a bit of a nervous stomach. And if we do break down below that 31 level, that'd be a quick out for me because of filling this gap and maybe giving back some of this vertical move. But above 31, I stay long. Break below that, and then I would be out quickly. And let it fill that gap, and then wait for. I think we'll get another opportunity. Football season lasts a while, so I think we have some time there.
Well, you actually mentioned the Women's World Cup. Do you know what today is?
Here we go. No,
it's National Soccer Day.
Is it really? That's a normal one. Okay, cool.
There's so many different days. It's also National Milk Chocolate Day.
There we go. There's the one I was waiting for. Yeah.
All right. The next one we want to look at is Alpha Oscar's asking about Oxy. It says it's been kicking his butt for 7 weeks.
Well, yeah, and we talked about this, right? I mean, I think you're going to get a reprieve here, though, with oil moving back to the upside, unless you've been short. But oil's been moving higher, so this is Buffett's favorite. I'm sure everybody knows that. He owns a big, huge position in this. I'm sure he's not feeling too good either with this move to the downside. But for whatever reason, this is the one he really likes. And we're starting to get a little bit of a bounce here. Let's see, when's the next earnings report? Because with oil prices coming back up, it's coming up soon. I always try to look from a more aggressive versus speculative idea because we all have different risk tolerances. I think if you wanted a speculative trade moving into earnings, this would be a good one. They could have an earnings surprise to the upside. I know that some of the oil companies have reported not so good earnings because it was when oil was moving down. But oil's turned around and is starting to move back up. So the fact that Oxy's been down here for so long, it seems like a lot of that bad news is priced in here. And even if the earnings aren't as great as I think maybe they could be, you could get some sort of a pop to the upside, perhaps on the earnings call with look towards the next quarter, whatever, because they just haven't had enough time, I don't think, with oil moving back to the upside. But moving into earnings here, you could get an upside surprise. And so I wouldn't put a full position on here. I do like half. And if it is a negative report, I would add to it. I think that's an opportunity to add to it and then hold it into the next quarter. So be a little bit longer term play here, not so much a trade, but more of a position to hold. But yeah, that's how I feel about Oxy.
Um, but we should stick on that oil theme because you had Exxon and Chevron report this morning. Exxon report numbers were good, but the stock is down today. Chevron numbers missed, but they're also down on the day. But they're restarting their buyback. I think it's $15 billion. I think top of head. But Will wants to look at XOM.
Yeah, there we go. We got Exxon. I figured that's where you were going. And you can see, yeah, it's down a bit. And that's because, and that's where I brought in the scenario, because I'd seen that this morning on the fact that, you know, they're dealing with back data, right? Earnings is always looking backwards. It's the conference call that has you looking forward. And the fact that even though it's down today, we're staying in this really thick trading range. As long as you stay above 100, I think this is a good place to be long. But again, I want to emphasize this is more of a position. You're looking at holding this into the next earnings report, not a short-term trade. I don't know that there's a catalyst for a quick bounce here, but I think with you know the higher prices being calculated into next quarter's earnings, you'll get a nice reward there. If you have some patience to hold this for a few months into the next earnings report, I think we could see a move back up here to 115. With that said, a break below 100 and I'd completely change that view and I'd get out. That would be my stop. So, you know, we're not that far away. Well, at this point, it says 103, the low is 102.32. As long as you can hold above 100 and you're willing to hold it for a bit, so maybe, you know, more like 6-month options, something like that. If you're an options trader, moving into, but that's what you're looking for. Is you're looking for an entry on this quarter's earnings towards a better result in next quarter.
Another one to look at had numbers out last night, I think. Enphase Energy, ENPH.
Yeah,
there is downgrades galore this morning in this one.
Yeah, we had this one asked in our insiders meeting last night, which is for our alert subscribers at ewotrader.com. We do that every Thursday night. And yeah, this was brought up, and we looked at the after hours chart last night. This break below 160 is pretty ominous here, I think. We've recovered a little bit from where we opened in the low of the day, but if we condense this chart and look back, you can see that we have a little bit of support there at 140, and then after that it's 120. So it's hard for me to see how we don't come down and test 140. So if you're long this one, you know, maybe this little bit of a bounce that we have now would be an out, or if you wanted to be really aggressive and hope to test 160, it may do that because that was support for a while. But I think the next low point here is going to be 140, and if we can't hold that, then perhaps down to 120. But yeah, that was one we looked at last night.
All right, well, let's move on to a different type of energy. We've got a couple of different EV stocks we want to look at. No prize for guessing which the first one is, Rob.
Tesla.
100% correct.
Oh, yeah.
You win the prize.
Yeah. Yep. ESP all over the place here. Oh, yeah. Everybody wants to look at this. And, you know, the problem that I have with Tesla right now is we've come back and we're holding support here. Go ahead and take the earnings off. We're holding here at 260. If you're long Tesla, which I know the entire planet seems to be, if we can hold 260, you're okay. A break below 260, and we still have this gap down here around 230 or so that we haven't filled. And we might, you know, come down and try to hold 240, but I can't imagine a break to 240 and not coming down and filling the gap. So if we can stay here above 260, I think you're okay. You could argue that, yeah, but there's a gap up here that hasn't been filled. But Elon told us, he's already warned that the next quarter is not going to be great because they're going to be shutting down factories. They're going to be updating technology in their factories and doing maintenance on their factories, and the production numbers are not going to be so great. And I don't know that there's pricing power, because it seems like pricing power or pricing is going the other way, right, on EV models. Now, I saw some stuff from Ford where they said the demand for their EVs, because they made a big bet on it, right? I mean, they pretty much have turned everything EV, has been surprisingly low for Ford, obviously because of probably of Tesla, but the fact that there's so many of them out there, But, you know, Elon's giving you fair warning that the numbers next quarter are not going to be so good. So if you want to get, maybe there's a short-term bounce that comes in here up towards this higher level. We had talked before, Dux, that I would imagine when we were at 280 that I couldn't imagine us not seeing 300, which we did. So 260 is the key. You can keep your long as it stays above there. But if it breaks that, yeah, then I think you got to get a little bit nervous, because that was a pretty good run higher there on that big record-breaking streak that they had. But you know, Elon's warned us that the production numbers won't be so good. So where's the catalyst to move higher? It's hard to see one.
Hey, listen, the market doesn't always listen. The Fed's been telling everyone they're going to keep on raising rates, but they don't seem to listen. So
Yeah,
maybe they're doing the same.
100%. Yeah.
The other one I want to look at is from Alpha Oscar again on Lucid. It would be interesting to see if it's still heading to 360 as presented a few weeks ago in one of our videos.
Yeah, you know, this was the one where I was talking about how I liked the car better than I liked the stock. And, you know, there's the wave 5 is still down there. So we had our wave 4 bounce. We've come back down. Now we're trying to hold 7. 7's the key level here. And I think, you know, this is a bit of a short-term move here. I don't see a catalyst for this to move much higher either. But understand that, you know, where the wave 5 forecast is down here is all the way into, you know, mid-September. So we're talking about a ways down. But we got to break 7 first. And as long as we hold 7, it'll stay stubborn through this level. And if it gets above 8, then we might have to rethink the pattern here. But as long as it doesn't break above 8, you know, if nothing else, it's in a trading range waiting for another break back below 7. And I just, you know, with all the competition out there, I just don't see this one grabbing a huge market share. So I think if you're patient, you're going to see that level, but it's going to take some time. And then when it breaks below 7, that's when you start to get a bit more interested.
All right, the next one I'm going to look at is Bitcoin. I was reading an article this morning. I can't remember what the company was, but they've got an 80% accuracy basic rating on a falling Bitcoin price at the end of the month, and they're calling it to be 27,000 at the end of August.
Wow. You know, it wouldn't be too surprising with this vertical move, but we have retraced some of it, and we're so far holding the 50-day moving average. So 29,000. If we break 29,000, then, you know, I'm right there with them. It's hard to see anything stopping it from going down to 27 or possibly even 26. But it's trying to hold the 50-day moving average, and you have that. How maybe they're discounting that historically every time they've had that, which is set up for the end of the first quarter next year, about 9 months ahead. Bitcoin has rallied. It's done that every single time. Maybe, you know, nothing's 100%. Maybe this is the time that it breaks that trend. As long as it holds the 50-day moving average, I think you can stay long. If it breaks below that, though, if it breaks the 50-day moving average and breaks below 29,000, then I would tend to agree with them, because that's where the next area of support is. But by the end of August, Tom, man, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. One coming in here from my side, well, not my side personally, but from another one. AMD, a report now Tuesday next week.
Yeah, that's been one that used to come up, a year or so ago. Used to come up every single week. People were looking at AMD, and it's fallen off with some of the other big names, but it's held in there really well. Massive testing of the 50-day moving average here. That's the royal blue line. So we're holding 110 through this test area here, and that happens to be where the 50-day moving average is. So we have both support and the 50-day moving average here. It needs to kind of get in gear for another run higher. And I think if you had a little bit of patience, you could stay long AMD here. But if it breaks below 110, that changes everything. It's probably going to at least 100. That's a little bit of support there at 100. It also is that round number, the tractor beam effect, the Star Trek analogy that I use a lot. And then if it doesn't hold 100, it's going to 90. But as long as you stay above 110, I think you keep your long. It isn't a 5-wave pattern to the upside. And so far, nice consolidation. And maybe it's just setting up for another run higher. That could very well be.
Yeah, I wonder. Texas Instruments disappointed on Tuesday, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with them.
Agreed.
Next one coming in is on Coinbase, COIN, obviously.
Yep, figured that one was coming, and I'm right along with the whole um, crypto world. But Coinbase is up today, and the problem is it's only touching the 10-day moving average on the high so far. So this little bit of a pullback, no big deal. We talked about this before, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, Dux, with this vertical move. And everyone knows it's watched. I don't like those. They tend to get retraced. And so we've done that. Break below 100. We were probably going to 90. I wouldn't even be shocked if we come down here to 80 because there's a ton of support there. I think that would be a gift. If you saw Coinbase at 80, I think you want to go long at that point in time. We may not get there, but as long as we're below the 10-day moving average, you have to have a slight, bearish tent and see how much lower that we come down. But the 50-day moving average is there, tons of supports there. If that forecast on Bitcoin going down is correct, then coin probably comes with it. But I don't think we see anything below 80 again on Coinbase. And let's see if we can hold somewhere in this 90 area. At least we've given back some of this vertical move. So I feel better about it now than I did after it had sprinted to the upside, because this is the concern when things go vertically up. This is what happens. This is why we talk about it all the time.
And they've got earnings on Thursday next week too. Talking about vertical moves, can you have a look at Roku?
Yeah. I guess some people maybe are staying home and watching, the streaming.
Return of the ads is what it is, apparently.
Yeah. Massive move to the upside on its earnings from last night. As you were chatting about, you were talking about this one before we came on live, Doug. So real surprise there, but here we go again. Same scenario, vertical move, a lot of short covering in here. I don't think you want to chase this long, even if it maybe tries to go a little higher on Monday. It's way too vertical. It's way too far from the 10-day moving average. I don't know that we come down and test 70 again. That might be out of the cards, but some sort of give back, I think, is going to happen here. And that's pretty darn interesting to me. Roku. Yeah, you feel like maybe that's was a little bit older school, right, from the streaming world, but apparently not. So really interesting. And if you caught that move to the upside on earnings, I think I would consider taking some gains right here because you just saw the same thing with coin. It's going to give some of that back at some point. So be happy with that move today if you caught it. But I wouldn't chase it here. I'd even maybe consider a quick short. Now, when we talk about this, when we have these vertical moves and we're talking about quick shorts on stuff that gets way too far overbought, we're talking about a day or two. That's it. These are not longer term trades. You're not looking for it to go back to the 10-day moving average or fill that little gap it had this morning. I'm just talking about a day or two give back. So they're quick ins and outs when you do that. I'd even consider that. I couldn't chase it long right now. Not right now. Let's let it calm down from this volatility today.
Yeah, the short interest of over 10%. It could be a catalyst in there as well. All right, the last one we're going to look at, another one that's got earnings next week, is Airbnb, and wow, that thing's been on a tear.
Yeah, and anything in the housing market has still been strong, and you still hear the CEOs talking the same song, that there's just a lack of availability. But this is different though, right? This is more travel, and this is the concern way back here at 1:30 was, are people going to travel this summer? Well, clearly they did. And you take a look at upcoming earnings. Well, it's not finding the earnings report.
It comes out on Thursday next week.
Thursday. Okay. I mean, you did say that. So as long as it doesn't go too crazy to the upside into earnings, I think with everything else that's been coming out, with the numbers that have been coming out, I think you could take a shot at that, perhaps a blow off top on their earnings report. So I wouldn't be against being long that into earnings. and see what happens, because it's just the data has shown that people were on the move this summer, and that should be reflected, you would think, in Airbnb's earnings. Now, some of it is, they're pricing some of that in, no doubt about it. So if you're thinking, yeah, the market's always looking ahead, we're rallying up into earnings, some of that's being priced in. That's why I'm thinking maybe a blow off top, where the people that got caught on the wrong side of it, thinking that there wasn't going to be so much travel this summer, probably have to cover those positions. So that would be my out if you got a pop on earnings. I think that would be the end of it. So we'll see how it trades before Thursday of next week. So just to be really clear here, if you get a big run between now and Thursday, then that's a different story. But if we're just going to slowly climb here in earnings, then I think you could stay long into earnings and see what the earnings report is. So you got to watch this one closely next week and see, because it'll come out before we chat again. So,
well, what a great opportunity! Because Tuesday you've got TradeFinder, right? What time's that on Tuesdays?
Tuesday at 9 p.m. 9 p.m. Eastern time. Yeah, 100%, Dux. You're spot on there. We can talk about it then. See, get an update on it. We do a little bit of Q&A at the end there. We look at the markets. We find trade ideas, and then and have some questions at the end. So yeah, that's a great point.
And everyone, make sure you tune in again next Friday at 2:00 Eastern Standard Time, because you're going to have earnings on Thursday night from Apple, Amazon, Gilead, and Airbnb. What a great show that'll be to tune into.
Yeah, well, there'll be a lot to talk about then.
All right, Rob, listen, have a great weekend and stay cool, and that's as we handle this heat wave in the US.
Yeah, it's been brutally hot here in Florida. Heat index is above 120. So safe travels to you, Dux. Take care, everybody. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful weekend.